Hey, Peyton,
Guten Tag.
nice to see you again on this beautiful day. And this time with a quote by Tara Brach, the meditation teacher, which we all know, where she said, "The way out of our cage begins with accepting absolutely everything about ourselves and our lives." How, Peyton, how does that give strength? How is that the way out of our cage?
It is good to be back with you, my friend. Glad to be talking about cages and radical acceptance. And it's totally counterintuitive, this lesson or this message that Tara Brach has here. And when I first heard her talk about radical acceptance and the title of her book and this and that, it seemed kind of dumb to me. I'm like, that's not how you make your life better. How do you make your life better by accepting that things are bad? That just doesn't make any sense. It's totally counterintuitive. And I've come around to it actually from a lot of paying attention to cause and effect. I've come around to it from observing what it's like to radically accept the whole of our lives exactly as it is when it's the most difficult or the most painful or the most frustrating, or when things in the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune just go completely contrary to what we would choose, what we would wish, what we would will for our lives. And the framing she comes from, I believe, a Buddhist framing of many of these things. I personally find a lot of value and just integration within the Christian framing of these things. And the form of this that arises within the Christian tradition is, may your will be done. In the Lord's Prayer, Ne wesabiana chakana de bashmaya av ba'ar. May your will unfold as in heaven, so on earth. And this prayer of radical acceptance is something that Jesus in his own life embodied so perfectly. And he embodied it, and what makes his walk with this and his example with it really helpful for me is he embodied radical acceptance in full vigorous action in the world. He was absolutely a man of going out into the world and doing and moving things and shifting things and putting his full life force into whatever is in front of him. And that's why I love his example of an integrated radical acceptance in full action, in vigor and force, which is, I think, the highest level through which we can operate when things are really difficult and the life is really stormy or whatever. And so how does this set us free? And another little tidbit about Aramaic is that a word that's commonly used for salvation is porkana, which means directly to set free. How does this relationship with reality, where we experience all that unfolds in our lives, all that unfolds in the world, all that unfolds in our own reality, the things that we want and the things that we don't want, the total mixed bag through which we tend to apply this lens of the knowledge of good and evil and divide up into what we like and what we don't like? The way back is through the tree of life and through unity and through seeing things as a whole, through seeing things, if we can, at least the present and the past, as the one unfolding destiny of the universe, the universal nature, or the unfolding will of God, or in a Buddhist framing, just the all that is and the light that arises. And this whole set of things is already here. Like, reality is already present. However it's arising, whatever has happened in the past, whatever is here in the present, it actually is. And so the two choices that we actually have, it's not how kind of we're framed to see this by our culture or whatever, but in every moment, we can move and act and respond to what's going on, for sure. And it's important to. But within that action, within whatever motion that we enter ourselves in, there's two different ways of relating to all of the stuff that's going on. And counterintuitively, the most empowering, the most sustainable, the most helpful, the most healing, the most peaceful, and the most prosperous way to respond to things, given the options that we have, which is either to disagree with reality or to move with reality, it goes much better, in my experience, if we actually learn to first align ourselves with what is, first bring ourselves away from cutting ourselves off and dividing with the knowledge of good and evil, of reality, toward an actual swimming in the waters of what's real, swimming in the waters of what's here. And this is, I think, the way out of our cage. And the cage is a prison made of clouds we can find just in our brain, this structure of, I'm here, but I wish I was here. This is here, but I wish this was here. This is the present, but I really don't want this to be the thing in the future. These frameworks of trying to manipulate and control and be the master of reality, they don't truly ultimately work. We're not the master of reality. We have agency for sure. And the way to maximize that agency counterintuitively is to first align ourselves with reality and fully dwell within what is. And fully dwelling within what is, bringing ourselves into wholeness, is best set upon a foundation of this acceptance, of this accepting absolutely everything in our life, absolutely everything in reality that is here now. Because what's here now is already arrived. It's not optional. It's not negotiable. What is here already right now? You can look around and just see your whole visual field at once. And you can see that, okay, this whole visual field is here. You can feel your body right here now. You can feel this, I don't know, this sensation in your stomach and your foot on the floor, and maybe a little bit of sweat on your fingertips or palms, and whatever latent taste of coffee is existing in your mouth. And you can sense that all of this is already here. If I agree with it or if I disagree with it, it's present. Same with everything that I hear. And in viewing our senses as a whole, we can recognize that there is just reality right now. And then all of the past is also outside of our control. All of the present is already arrived, and therefore it's outside of our control. We can exercise agency to move reality in a different way in the future, and that agency is best empowered, best energized, and most free once we have ceased to divide ourselves, once we have learned to unify with what is. And so this, I think, is the way out of our cage is by first radically accepting everything in our lives. This is the foundation of a unity that can allow us to flow through reality like a rock through water. And there's a lot of ways to look and experience this, and we'll inevitably fall away from this. But this is a power and a source of power and a source of healing that we can come back to. How do you think about this counterintuitive power? We forget this a lot. Our culture doesn't tell us about this, but at least it commonly tells us the opposite, even if it does whisper this to us from time to time through some. How do you think about coming back to this or recognizing when we've stepped out of balance to this? There's some inner game about moving with agency while also accepting what is. How do we strike that golden mean? All right, it's your turn to talk about radical acceptance. What do you got?
I have to accept that my microphone did not connect anymore after thunder it came. So it is. How do we hold the chaos of reality without being consumed by it? So sometimes stuff happens to us which we rather wish not happening to us. For example, right now, microphone went off. I talked about 4 minutes, but now I want to repeat myself because sometimes it cuts off, and somehow this thunderstorm maybe has like a electromagnetic pulse or whatever coming over my microphone. However, radical acceptance means when we release the cage, when we leave the cage, means that we give up our resistance to whatever happens. And when we give up our resistance, we won't waste any more energy for resisting something which will inevitably turn out to be futile resistance. Because our resistance to reality won't change anything about the outcomes. Possibilities probably are like, when we resist, things will turn out worse than they would become if we wouldn't have resisted at all. So at the same time, you can say anger can be a gift because there's energy in anger. But if you channel it into creating something productive or channel it into creating change, then you will have the agency about changing whatever you previously wanted to psychologically resist. But now you take agency and say, I want to implement a change, but not in a way where it is out of your cage, where you have to stretch out just to reach something and you waste a lot of energy just to have a tiny change ongoing. From the heart, where you find the point in the universe where you can lift the world out of its anger if you apply your lever, if you apply your acceptance to it.
So answer me this. This is, I'll speak from the point of view of the 22-year-old version of myself that first heard Tara Brach's points of view on radical acceptance, what I would have said challenging you is, why is radical acceptance anything different than complacency, which keeps us stuck in one place? Why is it anything different from stagnation? Isn't my refusal to accept the conditions of my present reality load bearing in the sense that it's the only way to get out of it? How can I free myself if I'm too busy accepting being in my cage? This doesn't make any sense.
First, you have to differentiate between your internal state and your external world. And when you accept, then you are free to act without losing so much energy. Yes, you can act and external world changes, but what good do you have when you have everything in the world but are not able to feel peace with it? This will be the difference between a good life, a peaceful life, and a life where you, yes, acted on it and changed something, but still are not fulfilled. So acceptance is the precondition to release the resistance which you feel against reality. Acceptance will help you deal with reality in a better way, in a more peaceful way than you could just reacting towards whatever kind of things life throws at you. How would you have responded to your 22-year-old self, Peyton?
I think you answered it perfectly. That's the exact root of it. Is there's just a difference between what empowers us within our own mind and heart and system, and what aligns us in a way that empowers us versus what's going on the outside. And we don't have to have a disempowering frame that shuts us down from the outside in order to move through the world. It's actually when we really pay attention and we put it to the test and we actually deploy this in our lives and we experiment and we say, okay, let me try this on. What are the fruits? How does this go? What we find, it is counterintuitive, but what we find is that all of my struggling against reality is actually not load bearing in terms of improving my relationship with reality. Action is load bearing, agency is load bearing, belief that I can change reality is load bearing, belief that I can move, courage to step forward. All of this stuff actually is load bearing. The amount of actual movement from my own system going into reality, all that's load bearing. But counterintuitively, what empowers that movement to flow? What empowers that movement to see the way out of the cage? What empowers that movement to see that maybe I can climb over these bars and out of the cage? Or maybe there's a key that is over there in the corner under the rug that I wouldn't have looked for if I was just trying to bash my shoulder against the wall. The actual ways through the situations and the quagmires that we find ourselves in, these do not require us to be driving with our foot just stomping down on the brakes. And a resistance to reality, a constant struggle against the reality that's already here, is effectively driving with one foot stomping down on the gas and the other foot stomping down on the brakes. That is the sort of subjective experience, and it divides us. And we are so empowered when we are unified, when we can allow the source to flow through us. And the source only seems to flow through us when we are aligned, when we are unified, when we are open to receive. And so that's what I would say. And the last note I would say is, what is the cage made of in the first place? What is the substance of the cage? And in my experience, there's kind of like there's two arrows. And the first is the arrow of what happens, and the second is the arrow of what we do, how we react to it. I think the cage is made of two materials. And you can imagine a prison cell that has a bunch of bars, and the bars are like this far apart, but every other bar is made of a different material. Like the first bar is the first arrow, and that's like the actual events of the world. That's that I broke my leg and now I have to go to the hospital and now I have a cast and now I can't do my favorite activity and my workouts are going to go backwards instead of forwards, and it's going to cost me money and it's going to set me back on this financial goal, and there's all of these actual cause and effect of reality. That's what every other bar is made out of. And that those bars kind of stay. Like we can move on those bars, we can affect those bars over time, but then there will be other bars that replace them over time. There's just going to be events of the world that don't go our way. And that's kind of the way. But every other bar is our reaction to it. Every other bar is my own saying like, this means this and this means this and everything sucks and this isn't going my way and I might as well do nothing and this is hopeless anyways, and what is even the point if I have to do this, and all of this things is this, and our reactions to it actually in terms of our real lived first person experience of the world, every other bar of our cage is made of our resisting or our reacting or our framing and how we are viewing reality. Even though we oftentimes are blind to this dynamic, but if we can totally wake up, if we can completely come to a surrender, if we can completely come to a truly fully embracing of the whole of reality, then what we find is that every other bar is made of clouds. And we can, once we have every other bar gone, then the gap is this wide. And we can slide through that gap and find freedom if we can see that every other bar is actually permeable by us. If we hold the cage with total fluidity, if we are not locking up and tensing up to where we can't fluidly flow through it. This is kind of the image that comes to my mind. And so with that, my intention for this week is to have this radical acceptance that allows every other bar to be made of clouds and allow myself to see that every other bar is made of clouds, that some of these bars are there and there is a first arrow, but also I have so much more agency over the second arrow. I have so much more agency over the freedom that can be found even within this, whatever circumstance I find myself within. And in that, that's enough to be free already. That's enough to find flow already. And that flow is the agency maximizing move. That's the best thing that I can do to move forward, is to align myself with reality, is to find wholeness. And then in that wholeness, find flow to navigate the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune that happen from the outside. And I can find peace within that counterintuitively. I can find joy even within the darkest of storms if I have the right view of reality. If I have this mindset of newe sabiana, of may your will unfold, in fully embracing reality on reality's terms now. Any final thoughts or intentions from you on this?
The image which came to mind was me being the donkey being chained to a plastic chair. And so my intention this week is to also invite myself to changing perspective and testing out my agency in terms of, okay, is it really a limitation of mine, or can I just try something out to see the actual reality of that bar and then see that it is made out of clouds? This is my intention for this week. Thank you very much, Peyton.
Beautiful thing. Enjoyed the conversation, my friend. I will talk to you on the next one.
Likewise. See you soon.
Bye-bye.